Welcome back to the Reddit show. I'm your host, Karen Monroe. In today's episode, OP sues their ex-fiancé for stealing their train collection. Our first story is written by DJ Duke of Spook. When your ex tells you to move out while she's on a work trip because the guy she cheated on you with is moving in, you get very creative moving out. I did this to an ex who asked me to move out while she was on a work trip and told me she was coming back with her new boyfriend. We were still together when she left. So I got these little noisemakers, battery-powered ones, the size of a quarter that emit sounds at just the right volume that you aren't sure if you really heard it. They are so quiet that two people could be sitting in an average-sized room, and while one can barely hear it, the other wouldn't hear a thing. They last ages and fit perfectly in light fixtures and in wall outlets. I got a box of 20 of them for like $100 on eBay and got so creative all over the house, her car. I even hid them in a boat her father got her. She was from a rich family and she grew up sailing. Now these little bastards make a noise at a completely random interval. Could be minutes, could be hours, could take a whole day off. They cycle noises like children laughing, a death rattle, a whistle, scratching noises, and some other ones I can't remember, but you get the idea. It was so unpredictable that it was near impossible for someone to just figure it out. Months go by, I get a new place, get my life together. Now, we had a few friends in common, and I still kept up with one of them. They were kind of sour about how she ended things, but they had grown up together and kept up the friendship, loosely talking and catching up on occasion. I never really asked about her, but one day we got to talking and he's wanting to prank some friends on a camping trip, so I told him about the noisemakers. As I'm telling him about them, he slowly starts making this face like he's gradually losing his shit. He's got this huge grin on his face and asks me, "You put these in insert my ex's name, home, didn't you?" And when I admit, he starts laughing hysterically. Turns out her new boyfriend had only lasted a few months and had left telling her that he couldn't handle whatever was going on with them and their mental states. Turns out for a while they had both heard things and sometimes only one would hear them, which gave the illusion that something really effed up was going on in their heads at different times. They couldn't figure it out, and eventually he wanted out completely, and having run down all the crazy list of shit people who are hearing voices would think, he ended it, believing he had been infected with some brainworm the government was putting in vaccines or something like that. It was amazing. I hadn't expected to hear anything about it. I rode that train for weeks. When it went away, I got another hit of that high. She moved out, told her parents she didn't want the house and to just give it to her brother or sell it. She wouldn't tell them why. I always tell people who ask about her that I hold no grudge, and I don't tell them the part where I totally messed with her so bad that I overshot the got her backstage and hit the blissful state of being satisfied with my work. My wife knows this story by heart because it's her favorite one to tell. That's hilarious. What a random but great prank. There's not a lot of pranks that, carry on for more than just like a minute or two, or like I've heard of people that leave like a fish and then they let it rot in like the attic or whatever. But eventually, that's going to stop. But it's like hearing noises like that would probably also drive me crazy and start making me question my own sanity. That was a good one. Our next story is posted by LivingBunch6371. They kicked out my sister-in-law when she came out, so I forced them to sell the same house. My sister-in-law came out as a trans woman when she was 18. My wonderful in-laws kicked her out of the house right then and there. They told her to leave the house and threw her out at 8 p.m. with no money or even any documents. Her father even took the car keys from her. She had to walk 8 miles to get to our place. She was crying and we took her in. This is horrible behavior, but my husband and I would have just cut them off if it was all they did, but they doubled down. They refused to hand over any of her documents, and my brother-in-law had to go over and barge into their house to get them. They also cleaned up all the money in their joint account. She had saved up $8,000 working part-time all through high school. They took the money and also sold her car, which was in their name. They were trying to ruin her life as much as they could. My father-in-law is a small-time businessman, and his biggest account was supplying my employer. I had helped him get the contract, and it was very lucrative for him. My employer was a family-run business, and they treated long-term employees more like family than employees. One day, I was talking to my boss about what happened, and he told me that if I could find someone to supply product within 5% of the price my father-in-law offered, that they would make the switch. My father-in-law offered us really great rates. He was very good at his job, but he had mucked up the contract because even though we always bought from him, we weren't obligated to buy from him. We could switch suppliers anytime, but he got complacent and assumed we wouldn't switch them. It took 6 months of painful research before finding a supplier who could replace him and get us good rates. This was not a major part of my duties, and I had to put in way more hours than normal to find the supplier, but when I did find them, I waited for a month before informing my boss. See, my in-laws had been planning to do major renovations for a long time, and it involved tearing down a major portion of their house. I waited until the renovation work had truly started before informing my boss. We started to get supplies from the new supplier the next month. It crushed my in-laws' business. It effed him, and he had to scramble to find new clients. They ended up having to sell their house to save the business, and they didn't get a good rate for it because the house was well half torn down for renovations when they sold it. My in-laws did try to get money from my brother-in-law, but he told them to F off. My father-in-law is a decent businessman, and he did crawl his way out of the hole they dug for themselves eventually. But even 8 years later, they still haven't bought a new house. I've just heard that they are still sour about what happened. I mean, I was just doing my job, and if they had kicked her out, they would still have the house. That's great. I love that. These stories are always so great because it's like there's always like some type of connection where you're like, you know what? You do wrong by someone that I love. Remember that thing that we had going on? Yeah, we're going to cut that off. I'm going to cut that off real quick. And, you're going to renovate your house? Better think again. Our last story is posted by The Train 33. Am I the jerk for demanding my fiancé pay me back for selling my train collection? I, 28 female, lived with my aunt and uncle because my parents could not raise me. My uncle started collecting trains as a hobby when he was working as an engineer. I took a huge interest in them as a child and a teenager. My uncle gave me his entire train collection when he became sick. When I turned 19, I moved out and found a nice apartment near my college. I brought the collection with me. Some of my friends thought it was cool, while others found it weird. I met my boyfriend in college and he moved in with me after we graduated. We got engaged last year and are currently struggling with debt, student loans, and the wedding. My fiancé asked if we could have an expert come into the apartment and price the train collection. I was against the idea and told him that I would not sell the collection as it was all I had to remember of my uncle. My best friend got engaged this past weekend and a few of us went to celebrate at her parents' lake house. I was gone for 2 nights and when I returned, the train collection was completely gone. My fiancé came running over saying that a collector came and gave him a decent price for the set. I completely broke down crying and started yelling at him that he destroyed my trust and told him to leave the apartment immediately. He left without protest and has been staying with his parents. I eventually reached out to him to tell him that he had to pay me back all the money he received for the train set he stole from me. I also threatened to sue him as well. His parents are trying to argue that he was only doing what was best for both of us. Am I the jerk for demanding my fiancé pay me back for selling my train collection? Oh my gosh. OP. Who does that? Huge red flag. That's just weird. It doesn't matter if it's a train collection or what you collect. Like, it even has more sentimental value because it came from your uncle and then he just goes behind your back and sells it. I mean, that's terrible. You should sue him. Definitely. I mean, I don't know if there's just like another way to go about it, but if it comes down to that, like, he totally deserves it. If you like our content, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. You can also listen to us wherever podcasts are streamed.